Very much. Could I please have your attention? We're about to start the next session. And if you could please take your seats. Thank you, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. So this session is parallel session 2, and the theme is Renewed and Strengthened Cultural Policies. My name is Miles Young, and I'm the Director of the Human Rights and Social Development Division at the Pacific Community SPC, which is based in Suva, Fiji. Bulvinaka and warm Pacific greetings. I will be your moderator for the session. But before I begin, may I pay my respects to all indigenous and cultural communities represented here today, and I acknowledge the indigenous peoples of this land on which we gather. I also acknowledge the government of Mexico for hosting this conference, for being warm and generous hosts, and everyone who has contributed to supporting this convening, including the UNESCO. This thematic session focuses on renewing, strengthening cultural policies, particularly in light of the shifting development landscape and issues impacting heritage and cultural diversity, including in the post-COVID-19 period. Also in the face of conflict and natural hazards, such as climate change. I welcome Excellencies, Honorable Ministers, and Deputy Minister from Member States and Associate Members who are making interventions. In this session, we will first hear from Member States and Associate Members who will make their interventions, and a gentle reminder, please, to all, if you could be mindful of the time, Naka. So globally, we are all aware of the need for cultural policies and the implementation at national level. There is a need for collaboration at various levels to ensure that culture and heritage sector remains a priority. In the Pacific, climate change poses one of the biggest threats to the survival and livelihoods of our island states and to our peoples, as well as to their respective cultural heritage. While culture and traditional knowledge are recognized as offering valuable contributions for climate adaptation and mitigation strategies, the threat to the natural environment, loss of biodiversity, and land and climate migration poses a real threat to intangible cultural heritage, heritage sites, and the continuity of language and cultural practice and knowledge. I will now invite countries by name to make their interventions. And again, a humble request to keep to the 4-minute allocation. To get us started, may I humbly invite Her Excellency Julieta Brodsky Hernandez, Minister of Cultures, Arts and Heritage. The floor is yours.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Bueno, buenas tardes a todos,
Good afternoon, ladies and
queridos
gentlemen,
ministros y
dear
ministras,
ministers,
colegas.
colleagues.
Mucho gusto estar aquí.
I am very happy to be
Quisiera partir
here.
agradeciendo la organización
First of all,
de
I want
este
to
evento,
thank
de
the
este encuentro tan
organizers of
necesario a la
this event
UNESCO
that
y
is so
sobre todo a
relevant.
nuestro
Thank you,
anfitrión, a
UNESCO.
México.
Thank you,
Porque
Mexico,
sabemos
for
lo
having us.
necesario
We
que es
know
tener
how
estas instancias,
imperative
¿no?
it is
Después de
to
40
have
años
these
para
fora
ponernos de acuerdo y compartir
after
nuestras
40 years to come
experiencias.
together to share
Y creo que, bueno, pese a
experiences.
que todos los que estamos aquí
And all
presentes
of
hoy
us
sabemos lo
meeting
central
here
que es la
know
cultura
how
para el
relevant
desarrollo de las
culture is
personas,
for
las
the development
comunidades
of
y los
people,
territorios.
communities and territories.
Aún tenemos que estar
And
convenciendo en
still,
nuestras
we have
sociedades, ¿no?
to
Su
convince our
importancia, que
societies
este no
on
es un
its
asunto
relevance,
suntuario o
because this is
secundario que viene
nothing
después de las
that comes
necesidades
after
básicas.
the basic
Y
needs
eso queda
of the
demostrado,
people.
esta
And
falta de
this
visión que
has
todavía
proven
tenemos
the lack of
en nuestras
vision that we
sociedades,
still have
con
in our
que no tengamos
societies,
un objetivo de
since
desarrollo
we
sostenible
don't have
propio,
sometimes our
pero
own
sobre todo
objective
por la
of
lucha que
sustainable
tenemos que
development,
dar
but
en cada
above
uno
all,
de nuestros
the
países
fight
para
at each of our
defender el
countries
presupuesto de
to
nuestro
defend the
ministerio,
budget
¿no?
of our
Así que bueno, en
respective
este
ministers.
contexto
In this context,
quería
therefore,
compartir con
I want
ustedes
to
cómo
share with
desde
you
Chile
how
estamos
is it that in
fortaleciendo y
Chile we are
renovando nuestras
strengthening and
políticas
renewing our
culturales.
cultural policies.
Desde el gobierno de nuestro
From the
presidente
government
Gabriel
of
Boric,
President
nos
Gabriel
hemos
Boric,
puesto como
we have
horizonte
set
el concepto
a
de democracia cultural.
panorama
Queremos
of
profundizar la democracia cultural,
of
que es un
cultural
enfoque que
inheritance,
nos
and this is
llama,
a
nos
focus,
compele
this is a
a
notion that
eliminar
calls
de
us
nuestro
to
lenguaje
eliminate
la
from our
frase
language
llevar
the
la
phrase
cultura
to
a,
take culture to,
que era
quote
una frase
unquote.
muy
That
utilizada
was a
antiguamente, sobre
phrase
todo en mi
used
país,
in the past, in my country
porque bajo
in
este concepto de
particular, because
democracia
under this
cultural
umbrella
entendemos que
of
todos los
cultural
territorios y todas
democracy,
las
we
comunidades
believe that
tienen sus
territories and
propias
communities have
manifestaciones
their own
culturales
cultural
y que
manifestations,
debemos desde la
and that we, from the
institucionalidad darles dignidad a
institutionality,
esas
should provide
manifestaciones,
dignity to such
valorarlas y
manifestations and
ponerlas en
expressions, and to
difusión, en
put them
circulación.
at the core of
Y bueno,
dissemination.
desde este anhelo
And
estamos también hoy
in this
renovando
willingness
nuestras
to do so, we are
políticas
renewing our
culturales de nuestro
cultural
ministerio,
policies
que
across
se
our
renuevan cada
ministry
5 años.
as we do every
Y lo
5
estamos
years,
haciendo
and
tanto
we
a
are
nivel
doing it
regional
at
como
regional,
nacional y también
national
desde los distintos
level
sectores,
as well, and
disciplinas
across
artísticas.
disciplines and
Y este
sectors
proceso de
of
renovación de
art.
nuestras
And this
políticas lo estamos
process of
realizando
renewal
bajo
of our policies
todo un
is taking
proceso
place in
participativo
a
con la sociedad
participatory
civil, con las
process
comunidades, con los
with
territorios,
communities, with society, with territories,
en diálogos sociales ampliados
with expanded and
y
comprehensive
muy,
social
digamos,
dialogues,
convocantes hacia toda la ciudadanía.
calling
En este
all
marco de
citizens.
acción
And in
estamos
this
proponiendo
framework
que
of
la cultura
action,
aporte
we
al
are
desarrollo
saying that
económico.
culture
Sí, eso es
contributes
algo
to cultural
importante para
development, and
nosotros.
this is very, very
Pero
important,
desde un
and also
enfoque
economic
distinto.
development, but
Queremos que la
under
economía
a different
creativa sea
scope,
una economía
because
social,
creative economy
solidaria,
should be
colaborativa,
solidary,
que
should
tenga
be
un enfoque de
collaborative, should
derechos
have
hacia los
a
trabajadores
scope
culturales, que
of
considere
rights towards
las
cultural
condiciones de
workers,
trabajo que han
and
estado tan
consider
precarizadas en el mundo cultural.
the precarious
Y debemos superar
working
esa
environment
precariedad
of
y
these
salir de esa condición
professionals, leaving
estructural.
that behind.
Para ello, nosotros
And for
desde
this
Chile estamos
purpose, from
creando
Chile,
un
we are
estatuto del
creating
trabajador y
a
trabajadora
statute
cultural.
for
No le llamamos
cultural
estatuto del
workers.
artista porque
It's
creemos
not
que hay que
of
ir más allá.
artists,
No
because we
son
believe
solo
that we
los
have to go
artistas los que
beyond
trabajan en las
artists,
artes y la
beyond
cultura.
those who work
O sea, hay
in
una
art and
serie de
culture.
agentes ahí
There are
involucrados.
stakeholders involved
Además de
across
este
these
estatuto,
activities. And
estamos
aside from this
creando
statute, we
programas
are
de promoción y
creating
fomento del cooperativismo. Creemos que el
cooperativism
cooperativismo
for
tiene mucho que
fostering
aportar en
programs,
el
because we
desarrollo
believe that it
cultural.
has a lot to
Y también
contribute
de
to
los
cultural development,
ecosistemas
and also
creativos,
creative
así le hemos llamado.
ecosystems. That is the way we are
Además,
calling them.
estamos elaborando un
Also, we
sistema
are
nacional de
preparing a
financiamiento
national
cultural
cultural
que nos
financing system
permita promover
that will
instrumentos
allow
basados
us
en la
to
colaboración, la
disseminate
asociatividad y
instruments
la
with
sostenibilidad de las
collaboration,
organizaciones
sustainability,
culturales.
working together
Todo ello
of
reforzado además por
cultural
nuestro compromiso
associations,
como
strengthened by
gobierno de
our
aumentar el
commitment as
presupuesto de
government to
cultura al
increase
1%
the
del
culture
gasto
budget
público.
of 1% of
Pero el
public
mayor desafío
expenditure.
que
But
nos
the
hemos
greatest challenge
puesto
that
como
we have
país
before us
es transversalizar
is
el enfoque
to
cultural e
make
intercultural
cultural
en
and
todas las
intercultural
políticas.
focus as
Esto
something
porque estamos
cross-functional, because
convencidas
we
de que
truly
la
believe
cultura
that
es un
culture
factor decisivo
is
para
a
las políticas
decisive
de paz,
factor
de
for
cohesión social,
peace,
de
social
recuperación de nuestros
cohesion,
barrios y
and
espacios
recovery of
públicos,
our public
también para una
spaces
educación
policies, and also
transformativa,
for
para el
transformational
desarrollo
education,
económico y el
for
cuidado del
economic
medio
development and
ambiente.
care for the
Queridos
environment.
ministros y
Dear
ministras,
ministers,
son grandes los retos que
we
enfrentamos
have
hoy y los tiempos
challenges
demandan que lo
before us,
hagamos en
and times
conjunto.
call for
Para
us
esto es
working
necesario un
together,
trabajo
and for this we
mancomunado
need to work
que proponga una
together
visión de futuro
with
y se haga
a
cargo de la
vision of the
grave crisis
future
planetaria que
and taking
enfrentamos.
care of the
Y quiero hacer un especial llamado a los países de
planetary
América
challenges
Latina
that
y
we
el
are
Caribe
facing. I invite
para que
countries from
podamos
Latin
generar
America
una
and the
visión
Caribbean, so that
conjunta,
we can share
consolidando un
a
espacio de
shared
diálogo
vision with
político,
political
regional,
dialogue, with
que
regional
cuente con una
dialogue,
gobernanza
with
que
its
permita
own
alinear las
governance to
agendas de
align
las
the
agendas de los
agendas
países,
across the
organismos
different states,
internacionales y
international
agencias de la
bodies
sociedad
and
civil
agencies
de
of
manera
the
sostenida y
civil society
constante.
in an ongoing
Y
fashion.
para ello,
And for that
queridos
purpose,
amigos,
my dear
Chile
friends,
estará siempre
Chile
disponible para
will be
facilitar este
available
proceso.
in order
Muchas
to
gracias.
facilitate the process. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias,
Thank you.
Your Excellency. Thank you for that intervention. Our next intervention is by His Excellency Dario Franceschini, Minister of Culture, Italy. It will be conveyed through video. Thank you.
Presidente López Obrador, direttrice Zulé, cara Audrey, stimati ministri, distinte autorità e delegazioni presenti. Grazie a UNESCO, al governo messicano, a voi tutti per l'opportunità di ritrovarci in questa straordinaria edizione di Mondiacult, la seconda dopo addirittura 40 anni a rileggere e ripensare la cultura nel mondo in cambiamento. Cultura e patrimonio, e identità e creatività, e tradizione e innovazione, ma anche valori, partecipazione, convivenza, incontro, dialogo, cooperazione, scambio. Cultura e ricchezza delle diversità, eredità delle memorie singole e collettive, e all'origine delle parole, dei gesti, delle rappresentazioni, del rapporto uomo-natura nelle diverse forme materiali e immateriali. Mondiacult torna a ricordarci quanto la cultura sia oggi più che mai al centro del mondo. Culture Unites the World è stato il titolo e il motivo del primo G20 dei ministri della cultura che l'Italia ha promosso insieme all'UNESCO e ospitato nel luglio del 2021 nella splendida cornice del Colosseo e che ha riaffermato anche nella dichiarazione finale l'importanza dei settori culturali e creativi per una rigenerazione sostenibile, sociale, economica, ambientale, climatica e tecnologica. La grande sfida è poter garantire alle nuove generazioni la conoscenza, la fruizione, la salvaguardia e l'accessibilità alla bellezza e alle risorse secolari giunte sino a noi attraverso politiche e processi di formazione e educazione. Un impegno importante, convinto, che è stato nuovamente lanciato e approfondito nella prima conferenza dei ministri della cultura del Mediterraneo che l'Italia ha organizzato a Napoli lo scorso giugno 2022. Anche in quell'occasione, sempre con l'aiuto dell'UNESCO, la cultura ha consentito di dialogare sui temi della pace, dei conflitti, della crisi, dell'importanza delle azioni per la protezione del nostro patrimonio universale. Mondiacult offre un incoraggiamento unico alla riflessione condivisa e alla cooperazione culturale, che vede tutti noi coinvolti nel quotidiano e nel futuro imminente e prossimo. Mondiacult è perciò anche una grande risposta alle emergenze del nostro pianeta, alle sfide della transizione verde e digitale, delle diseguaglianze e alla costruzione della pace. Questa è una visione che l'Italia ha sempre sostenuto con grande forza negli anni perché è parte integrante della nostra identità culturale e della nostra Costituzione. Ho avuto lo straordinario onore di poterla affermare quale Ministro della Cultura con un lavoro che è iniziato nel 2014 e ora si compie. Desidero in questa occasione rivolgere a Audrey Azoulay, in rappresentanza dell'UNESCO e lei personalmente, e a tutti i colleghi ministri e al mondo della cultura un ringraziamento per questo lungo percorso insieme e per il lavoro che abbiamo potuto svolgere. Come ha detto un grande scrittore italiano, Mario Rigoni Stern, l'importante quando si guarda indietro è non rimpiangere le montagne che non abbiamo salito. Penso che assieme possiamo dire di aver salito in questi anni molte splendide montagne e per questo vi ringrazio.
Grazie, Your Excellency, Honourable Minister for Culture, Italy. Our next intervention is from Japan. I'd like to invite His Excellency Yano Kazuo, Honourable State Minister for Education, Culture, Sports, Science and Technology. Honourable Minister, the floor is yours.
Chair, thank you for this opportunity to make a few remarks. At first, I wish to welcome the holding of this UNESCO World Conference on Cultural Policies and Sustainable Development and the strong leadership of UNESCO. I'd like to express my sincere appreciation to UNESCO, the government of Mexico, and all the other organizations and people who made such effort for the holding of this conference. I'm extremely pleased that we are able to exchange views with delegations from countries around the world regarding sustainable development and cultural policies here at the Mondiacult 2022. That culture is an enabler and driver for the realization of sustainable societies is becoming commonly recognized around the world today. Japan has a law that is the basis for the formulation of its culture and arts policies. The law asserts that the enjoyment of culture and the arts is an inherent right of people, and that culture and the arts promote mutual understanding among people, play an integral part for creating a society that embraces diversity, and contribute to world peace. In Japan, we are currently in the process of revising the basic plan on the promotion of culture and the arts, which sets the basic and overall direction of culture and arts policies. For this revision, great attention is being paid to the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and international discussions on the achieving of sustainable societies. Moreover, it goes without saying that cooperation among nations is vital for making sustainable societies a reality. Up to now, Japan has been cooperating in various ways with many countries in the area of culture and the arts, particularly for the preservation and restoration of cultural heritage. We intend to continue these activities in the future. The COVID-19 pandemic has seriously impacted culture and the arts worldwide. At the same time, we have surely recognized again the power of culture and the arts to comfort and give courage and hope for the future. And as we confront global issues like pandemics, natural disasters, and armed conflicts, we depend on culture and the arts to brighten the lives of people. I'm confident that this conference will be a valuable opportunity for us to share recognition of the role and importance of culture, and to show the direction and guidelines for cultural policies in the future. Japan will positively exchange views with the governments, cultural organizations, experts, artists, and other partners of all countries for optimizing cultural policies to realize sustainable societies. We will make our best effort to advance culture-based policies, both in Japan and overseas. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Your Excellency, the Honorable State Minister for Education, Culture, Sports, Science and Technology, Japan, for your intervention. Our next intervention is from Jordan and will be delivered by Her Excellency Haifa Al-Najjar, Minister for Culture in Jordan. Minister, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Your Excellencies, honorable guests, ministers, representatives, allow me please to start by affirming Jordan's and my own personal position on the urgency to embrace cross-cutting approach to culture as a vital path to create and build cultural public policies. In this manner, arriving at viable legislations and framework is strongly desirable and possible across many other fields. It's also clear and anchoring culture into public policies horizontally would help policymakers and other actors to best design new institutions around transversality. The justification behind considering the multidisciplinary approach in rethinking culture, revisiting culture, public policies deserve our cooperation and support. Of these reasonable grounds are the transformative power of culture, digitalization and its horizontal nature, structure, and the knowledge-based designed institutions that better serve developmental role of culture across numerous fields. So, to bring culture into the heart of our universality and into the universality of our public policies for sustainable development, we, as member states, civil society organizations, and other actors are called to share our experiences to highlight the breadth and the diversified challenges facing our communities at all levels, internationally, regionally, sub-regionally, nationally, and locally. By embracing culture as a transformative power, the Ministry of Culture of Jordan revisited its public policies through cross-cutting fields, and the major shift in this regard is the new draft bill of cultural and creative industries, which in return would change the function of culture in Jordan to greatly serve people-centered sustainability policies. To scale up the cultural reform and comply with UNESCO conventions, we visualize creative culture as a precondition for development and to responsive sphere for international challenges. Moreover, the human experience showed us the great role of culture in achieving equilibrium, stability on economic and other fields, and for mainstreaming public cultural policies as greater common goods. Also, our strategies and efforts for local communities efforts made the integration process for local communities a reachable goal and intended this transformative process towards a context where culture should serve economy. To have successful regulation, to govern and manage the cultural sphere, the governance authority and the sustainable development should be both granted. Our holistic approach gave us a good role, a good ground in institutionalizing traditions, values, trends, and interests which accompany the transition process, especially those related to the knowledge era. In this regard, we have been cooperated and coordinated with Arab, Islamic, and international organizations to create the best intellectual and material conditions for culture to cope with the contemporary challenges. Thank you all so very much. Thank you.
Navalevu, thank you very much, Honorable Minister for Culture, Jordan. Our next intervention is from Serbia, and I invite His Excellency Stanko Blažević, Honorable Deputy Minister for International Cooperation and European Integration in the field of culture. Naka.
Thank you very much. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, so much to say, so little time, right? We all felt it. But what I must say that I would like to thank Mexico, first of all, for hosting this historical conference, especially in the aftermath of a recent earthquake, which is another challenge that they faced. And of course, UNESCO for organizing such a momentous event, once in a generation, as has already been said. In our world, one of the roles of culture, a marvelous ability of it as it appears, is that it can help us recognize the causes of challenges we face and primarily of the challenges the culture itself faces. That we do not remain fascinated by the consequences and therefore trapped by them. Recognizing the causes of cultural challenges, whether natural or man-made, collateral or deliberate, also turns out very often to be a key precondition for surpassing them. Even the means for facing the challenges, not only recognition of their roots. Before culture, renewing and strengthening cultural policies may sometimes be found in culture itself. This would have to be, in my opinion, one of the strives of our conference, especially in a world speeding up as it is and as we perceive daily. In this light, for the sake of time, I would like to share with you just a few examples of cooperation within UNESCO of Serbia, a country committed to multilateralism and the core values of our organization, actively participating in many aspects of its work, and at the forefront of some of them. I'll talk about that a little. Currently chairing the executive board, a contributor to several UNESCO funds, while also, on the other side, having cultural assets inscribed on the register list of World Heritage in Danger. It's only natural that with such a diverse profile of interests, Serbia has a rich record of activities and a multifaceted approach. Now about the forefront. In context of renewing and strengthening cultural policies, it's my pleasure to report that recently we have participated in pilot project related to fight against illegal trade in cultural property, also encouraged by the help of UNESCO in the face of catastrophic floods of 2014 in Serbia. We conducted dynamic work on raising the capacity for disaster risk management together. Then of particular importance is also Serbia's participation again in pilot project Culture 2030 indicators, to mention but a few. Now for the sake of brevity, we are omitting mentioning, for example, that we have new inscriptions on various lists of intangible cultural heritage, for example, numerous activities and cultural diversity, many other systemic laws being brought on. But what can be most useful, I think, at this point, is that, well, while it may not be possible to present complexity of instruments used, that we can use the opportunity to present principles, guidelines. Now, on resiliency, on COVID-19, quick and adequate, flexible response proved to be important. In this way, we managed to keep our institutions working during the pandemic, which made them much more resilient and prepared for new challenges. On accessibility, just to illustrate, the model of European Capital of Culture has also been transferred to the national plane, and a number of best practices on national level have been integrated on regional level in a vibrant Open Balkan initiative. Now, concerning the issue of digitization, we developed models that started off as a necessity, however proved to have an added value, winning new generations of audience. All these and many other measures, including in the field of protection of cultural heritage, did not lead to obvious results overnight, but with persistence we prevailed, the persistence that we must share in our goals. In conclusion, in this light, and I must say, at this point I would like to emphasize that we remain available and open to all partners for sharing the lessons learned in all these and many other instances that I cannot mention now. Now, in this light, our global exchange, continuing the work within the framework that was set 40 years ago, has indeed led to a strong synergy, although much remains to be done, as it has already been said. Let's just consider a fascinating record of achievements within the UN family and continue our efforts bearing them in mind. Therefore, in the end, allow me to support the striving of this conference in the sense of its affirmation of international structure of cultural policies, promotion of culture and as a global public good, revival and innovation of the core values from which we started, giving us new strength to face common challenges ahead. Thank you very much for your patience.
Meitaki, thank you, Your Excellency, Honorable Minister, Honorable Deputy Minister, Serbia. Our next intervention is from Spain and will be delivered by His Excellency Miguel Octavi Iceta y Lorenz, the Honorable Minister of Culture and Sport, Spain. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Ministras, ministros, autoridades,
Thank you,
amigas y
authorities,
amigos,
ministers, friends.
permítanme que empiece con
Allow
tres
me to
gritos.
start with three
Viva
shouts:
México,
Viva
viva la
Mexico,
UNESCO,
Viva
viva la
UNESCO,
cultura.
and
Este es
Viva
el espíritu de
Culture.
nuestra intervención
This is the
hoy
spirit
aquí.
of my participation today.
Se cumplen 40 años de la
40
primera conferencia de
years
políticas
after the
culturales.
first
Pero ha
conference
llegado un
on
momento
cultural policies,
para
but the time
pedirle a la
has come
sociedad,
to
lo
ask
decía mi colega
society,
de Chile,
as my
que
colleague of
vuelva
Chile
a
said,
mirar a
to
la
look
cultura.
once more
Una
to
cultura
culture,
que
to
es una
have
herramienta
its side
capaz
into
de
culture,
crear
which is
sociedades más
capable
justas,
to generate
más
more
igualitarias
just,
y más
egalitarian,
sostenibles.
and more
La cultura es
sustainable
creación, comunidad y
societies.
memoria,
It
pero también es
represents the
sinónimo de
memory, but
libertad,
also synonym
respeto y
of
tolerancia.
freedom,
La
respect, and
cultura genera
tolerance.
beneficios
It
económicos y
provides
sociales,
economic and
pero
social
también es
results,
fuente
but
de
also is
bienestar
the source
emocional
of
y de
emotional
salud,
well-being and
sin
health,
olvidar que
without
constituye
forgetting
un
that
derecho
it
imprescindible
represents
para alcanzar
a
el
right to be
progreso
able to
social.
have social
La cultura es hoy más
development.
necesaria que
Culture
nunca
is
en
more
estos momentos
necessary
en los que el
now
mundo se
than
enfrenta
ever when
a
the world
importantes
is facing
desafíos.
many
Acabamos
challenges.
de salir de una
We
pandemia que ha
just came
afectado y
out of
sigue
the
afectando
pandemic
aún
and it's still
al sector
affecting
cultural.
the cultural
Y cuando ya
sector.
empezábamos a
And when we
recuperarnos,
started
la
seeing the
invasión rusa de
recovery,
Ucrania
then the
nos ha
Russian
sumido
invasion
en
in
una
Ukraine
situación
has
crítica.
presented us with a
que desde
deep
el gobierno de
crisis. It's an
España
invasion
hemos
that,
condenado
according to
desde
our
el primer
government, we
momento,
have condemned
de
from
forma
the
muy
first
enérgica,
moment
porque es
with
una
big
agresión
energy because
completamente
it is
injustificada
an
y de una
unjustified
gravedad
aggression,
Es una
and
violación
it is a
flagrante del derecho
flagrant
internacional
violation of
y de la Carta de
international
Naciones
law
Unidas.
and the
Pone
Charter
en
of
riesgo la
United
seguridad y la
Nations,
estabilidad
endangering
globales
global
y
stability.
pone sobre
And
la mesa la
also it
destrucción
presents
del
on the
patrimonio
table what
cultural
it is the
ucraniano.
destruction of the cultural
La
heritage
resolución de
of
la conferencia
Ukraine.
de
The resolution of the
1982
conference of
recogía una
1982
expresión, una frase
compile
de
a
Benito
phrase
Juárez
of
que
Benito
compartimos.
Juárez that we
Entre
also
los
share
individuos como
among
entre las
individuals
naciones,
and
el
among the
respeto
nations. The
ajeno
respect
es la paz.
to others is
El
peace.
derecho ajeno es lo
This
que nos ha de
respect
guiar.
to others is
No
what should be
podemos
guiding
asistir
us. We
impasibles
cannot
a
remain
el
with our
desprecio
arms
de ese derecho.
crossed by not taking into
¿Qué
account
nos
that
trae
right.
aquí a esta conferencia?
What is bringing
Muy
us into
claramente,
this conference?
queremos
Well,
que la
clearly,
cultura
we
sea
want for
declarada
culture to
un
be
objetivo de
declared to
desarrollo
be
sostenible, de forma específica
SDG,
y
as
concreta,
in a very
de forma
specific way,
comprometida
in a
y
committed
obligatoria.
and compulsory way.
Para eso
And
necesitamos
for
que la
that, we
ciudadanía se
need for
mueva,
citizens
las
to
organizaciones
move,
sociales,
social
los gobiernos, y
organizations,
también
governments, and
implementar
also
políticas
to
culturales
implement cultural
innovadoras.
policies
A
that
estos
will be
efectos me gustaría
innovative.
compartir
And for
brevemente
this, I would
dos
like to
políticas que
briefly
estamos
share two
desarrollando en
policies
España.
that we are
La
developing
primera, que
in
allí sí
Spain.
llamamos el
The first
Estatuto del
one, and
Artista,
that is
que se
the
trata
statute or
sencillamente
bylaw
de
for
que
the
nuestras
artists,
leyes
and that is
laborales,
that our
fiscales,
label,
de
tax,
seguridad social
social
se
security
ajusten a
laws
las
to
necesidades
be
específicas de la
adjusted
actividad cultural.
according to the
Es un
cultural
esfuerzo
needs.
notable
This
al
is
que
a great
llamamos
effort
a
that
todos
is
los
being made,
países
and we
del
make
mundo.
this call to
Un
all the
segundo
countries.
elemento es el
One second
facilitar el
element
acceso
is to
de los
facilitate
jóvenes a la
access
cultura.
of youngsters
Hemos
to
creado un
have
bono cultural
culture.
joven
We
para que
have
los jóvenes,
a
al cumplir
bonus
18
of
años,
culture for those
reciban una
youngsters
aportación de
that when they turn
400 euros
18, they will
para que se
receive
dedique
400 euros so that they will
específicamente a las
specifically use
actividades
that
y servicios
for
culturales.
cultural
Estamos convencidos
services
que
and
una
products.
política
We
de
are
salvaguarda de la
certain
creación,
that
de
by
salvaguarda de los creadores,
safeguarding
de potenciación del
creators,
acceso de la
authors,
cultura
artists,
a
and
toda la
having access
sociedad
of culture
nos va
for
a
all
permitir afrontar los
society
retos que
will allow
afrontamos.
us to solve the
Queremos
challenges
ese
that we
nuevo
have.
objetivo de
We
desarrollo
want for
sostenible.
these new
Sin
sustainable
cultura
development
no
goal.
habrá
With no
presente y
culture,
no
there will
habrá
be no
futuro.
present
No
and
nos
there
lo
will be
podemos
no
permitir.
future.
Muchas
We
gracias.
cannot allow for that to happen. Thank you very much.
Gracias, Honourable Minister, for your intervention. Our next intervention is from Tunisia and will be delivered by video by Her Excellency Ms. Hayat Goutat Goumatzi, Honourable Minister of Cultural Affairs, Tunisia. Thank you.
سيدة أدري أزولاي المديرة العامة لمنظمة اليونسكو، أصحاب السمو والمعالي وزراء الثقافة، أصحاب السعادة، السيدات والسادة الحضور الكريم، أود في البداية أن أتوجه بأسمى عبارات الشكر إلى السيدة المديرة العامة لمنظمة اليونسكو ومعاونيها على ما يبذلونه من جهود مقدرة
for everything that you're doing, for all your efforts to support what the different countries are doing to improve their cultural efforts and policies. Likewise, I would like to thank Mexico for its hospitality and the way it has prepared this World Conference, presenting very important topics and affairs that are running in parallel, also with some other political problems that the world is facing.
ينسجم مع توجهات التنمية المستدامة
In Tunisia, we're making changes that go along with other aspects of development that we have in our country. Our policy for 2023-2030, with those structural reforms, that is, that they want to have qualitative changes in the area of justice and distribution of wealth in Tunisia after the revolution that we had in our country in order to guarantee peace and to promote international policies to carry out development in our country. For us, this cultural project that we are implementing is something that we take in seriously. Our country is working very hard to be able to use all the technological tools and means so to improve cultural policies that we have in our country. And in this context, we have concentrated our efforts to have a communication structure
ورقمنة الخدمات المزدهرة
based
والمراهنة
on
على الصناعات
on
الثقافية
ICTs of
والإبداعية
high quality and
وتشجيع
also
الشراكة
depending
بين
on the
القطاع
most
العام
recent
والخاص.
technological and
هذا
scientific
إلى جانب
discoveries,
تبني
having cooperation
سياسة
of the
إصلاحية
private and public
تقوم على مراجعة
sectors.
النصوص القانونية
And we
وتقييم
are reviewing
منظومة
the laws,
إسناد
the current
الدعم
laws that we have,
والعمل
so
على
that we can
المحافظة على
keep on
الذاكرة
promoting this kind
الإنسانية
of
من
policies
خلال
and also
برنامج
to
طموح
preserve human
انطلقنا
memory
فيه ويتمثل
through
في
a
رقمنة الأرشيف
program that
السمعي
we just
البصري
started
الذي
implementing, and that
يعود
is to
تاريخه
digitize
إلى فترتي
the audio-visual
الحربين
file of
العالميتين.
our history
السيدات
during
والسادة،
the two world
في
wars.
ختام كلمتي يشرفني
And
وأنا المطلة
to conclude, I would like to say that it is an honor for me to be able to be here from a country which is full of history, Berkhaldoun. I would like to renew my invitations so that we can work all together in a collaborative mode to be able to get closer in the culture arena and also to face the challenges that we are facing right now as a world, to work together so that our future will be a better one on this earth, because as the Tunisian writer Mahmoud al-Masari stated, the earth is for those that have hope and that want to face the future. And I wish you peace. Thank you so much.
Malo apito, Your Excellency, thank you very much for your intervention, Honourable Minister of Cultural Affairs, Tunisia. Our last but not least, our final speaker and intervention in this session, the first part, is from Zambia, and I call on His Excellency, Rodney Sikumba, Honourable Minister of Tourism and Arts, to make your intervention. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. I will join my colleagues in thanking the Government of the Republic of Mexico for the warm and hospitable welcome they gave us, though I haven't had any tacos yet, but anyway, it's been fantastic. And obviously UNESCO Secretariat for having put up a stellar conference. I believe you have an excess of 150 ministers here, which is very, very good. I must make mention that the former administration in Zambia for cultural sector began in 1965, and this is just a year after we attained independence. And obviously the first cultural policy was launched in 2003 with an attempt to review it in 2008. That obviously was in an effort to get an increased involvement from private sector. And having assumed office, the new government now, we're looking at putting the private sector in the forefront, because we know that the private sector are the ones who've got the appetite to make money. Distinguished guests, I'll just run you through a few numbers which will give a perspective of how our creative industry has contributed to our GDP in the last couple of years. We've looked at the arts industry behaving like a yo-yo. In 2017, it reduced by -4%, -0.4% rather, from 0.5%, obviously negative in 2016. And then we saw an increment of 12%, which was recorded in 2019. Now, the cultural sector in Zambia, just like any other sector, was not spared by the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. And as such, the sector, which depends largely on public performances, social events, for sustenance, was really, really impacted. And so you notice that between 2020 and 2021, a whopping 968 events were actually cancelled countrywide, and the film industry recording a loss of about 35%. Music, 28%, while the remaining of the 35% was for dance shows, community theater, stage, comedy shows, as well as festivals and arts. So you will realize that the COVID pandemic was really, really ravaging in the sector. Now, to cushion the loss that was incurred by the various players in the sector, there were a few initiatives that the government put in place. Obviously, it was to give food packs to those deserving people. Unfortunately, in that particular year, we brought in the Arts Empowerment Fund that came through, administered through my ministry, through the National Arts Council of Zambia, and approximately $2 million was dispersed, of which $2 million wasn't much to really touch many lives that we needed to touch. However, most of the players in the sector, especially the performing arts, try to employ personal initiatives such as having virtual concerts and performances, you may have heard. And again, that's when the digital aspect of which came on board. Now, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to proudly announce that the Ministry of Tourism, which I preside over, kickstarted the review process during the last quarter, which is obviously of the cultural policy, and the ongoing review is participatory. We're getting a lot of private sector involved in that aspect. And we are very committed to developing and implementing the national cultural policy that is responsive to the needs of the sector, which will obviously positively contribute to our country's national development agenda. But I must make mention also, we want to marry our creative arts together with culture. Zambia sits on 72 dialects, and our traditional ceremonies themselves today will not only be the traditional ceremonies that people see, but we want to make them cash cows. By that, we want communities to actually benefit, monetize those traditional ceremonies that will also speak to the various natural resources that Zambia sits on. I'll take this opportunity to also mention that Zambia sits with 20 national parks, 36 game management areas, and of course is the home of the mighty Victoria Falls. So I'd like you to invite, rather, you to visit Zambia and see the diverse culture that Zambia holds today. I thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, Honorable Minister, for your intervention and that open invitation to visit your beautiful country. We now come to the close of the first part of this session. Honorable Ministers, we thank you for sharing your interventions with us today. And ladies and gentlemen, Excellencies, please join me in acknowledging their interventions in the usual way with a very warm round of applause. For this second part of the program, we have observers who will be making interventions. And we have two observers who are each allocated 2 minutes. The first, may I please introduce and call upon Mr. Biat Sanchi, President of the International Federation of Coalitions for Cultural Diversity, to take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dear President, Excellency, Ministers, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues and friends, I am a musician. As has been said many times today and in the months before, the cultural sector has been tremendously hurt, even damaged by the pandemic all over the world. At the same time, and that has been said as well, it helped people and societies to stay resilient through the crisis. Why was the cultural sector hurt so much? Not the least because in many countries it is still a totally informal sector without any rights for the many people concerned. This has to change rapidly, ladies and gentlemen. Every artist, every cultural professional in every country around the globe must have the same rights to social protection as any other professional. And I would like to thank the Minister of Chile for the initiative that has been presented in that respect. Why is that so? Because without a sustainable cultural sector, there might be no culture left to sustain people through the next crisis. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, dear ministers, excellencies, we must act now. As has been said in the panel before, we cannot wait 40 years until the next Mondiacult conference to attack these issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that intervention, Mr. Sanchi. The next intervention is from the Canada Council for the Arts, and I'd like to call upon Simone Brau, the Director and CEO. Thank you.
Thank you. I have also the honor of being the chair of the International Federation of Arts Council and Cultural Agencies, IFACA. As you all said, arts and culture are a fundamental dimension of the human journey. Connections between the movement for social justice, decolonization, equity and inclusion, climate justice, and artistic creation and cultural empowerment of communities are more and more strong all over the world. We need to articulate the great and powerful, inspiring ideas, concepts, and discourses, but we also need not only to renew the cultural policies, but we need to have actionable ideas right now. We built over the years fantastic cultural systems all over the world with institutions, but we need to recognize right now that where we have failed all over the world is to protect and remunerate the artists and the creators who are at the source of all that wealth that is generated for society in the cultural sector. So culture is both a dimension of our societies, but it's also a sector that needs to be fixed and repaired, not only because of the pandemic, but because of systemic issues, exclusions that are still out there. So thank you for all the work you do, and I think we need to work all together, UNESCO, ministers, organizations like IFACA, and all the networks in the world who could make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you to our observers for your interventions. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, please join me again in acknowledging their interventions in the usual way with a very warm round of applause. Thank you. Honorable Ministers, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, so we've now heard a number of important interventions today. As we have heard, culture suffers or is faced by a number of challenges, and the interventions today have covered those challenges. But what we have also heard today is that the resilience and the renewed will to address those challenges and ensure that we have sustainable cultural policies moving forward. I know we're a little over time now, so I'll just very quickly wrap up by saying while the context across our nations and regions may differ, and we've heard from various regions across the world, I'm sure that we will all agree that the transformative change that we need may be realized with strengthened political will, strong enabling policy environments, and the strategic partnerships which our speakers have mentioned today. So without further ado, I thank you for your patience. Thank you for joining us for this session, and I hand over now to the moderator for the next session. Navallevu. Thank you. Thank you.